All right, welcome back everybody to Getting Past the Premium. Today we've got an exciting episode with Ryan and I discussing the difference between coming in and talking to a client about saving on their insurance premium versus really coming in and understanding their company, their goals, and what conversation a business owner might find more valuable. So we're looking forward to today's episode. Enjoy.
Welcome to the Getting Past the Premium podcast.
Hey man, good to be back.
What's up? Yeah, it's good to be here.
I know we don't have a guest today, so you're looking at, they're getting us today.
Yep.
So we kind of wanted to spend the time today though talking about how we view, or how we should be viewing as an industry, the conversation with a business owner around coming in and talking about saving on insurance premium or helping them achieve their company goals.
Yeah.
Right? And why would a business owner maybe want to have one of those conversations versus another? Right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I was scrolling down LinkedIn the other day and was checking out some posts, and in a completely different industry, there was an example of this. And it kind of hit me, this topic for this episode. And, I'm like, why does it have to be that somebody in the risk management space, when you walk into a business owner's office, it's immediately centered around products and price versus conversations like, how are you going to help us grow? Right? How are you going to help us achieve our long-term goals?
If growth is one of their company goals. Yeah.
Sure. So, I don't know. I thought it was an interesting topic to toss around today and discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. And today we're drinking a favorite of mine, Basil Hayden's from Kentucky Springs.
It's phenomenal.
It's delicious.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Cheers, Big Al. We got Big Al behind the...
If you need a refill, I can come full service.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
I like that, yeah.
Thanks, Big Al.
I like where we're going with that.
Security guard, marketing manager,
Waiter
server.
extraordinaire, butler.
There we go.
I'll take any.
Absolutely. So, no, I do think it's an interesting topic because I think for whatever reason, the insurance industry up to this point has been very much focused on what you were talking about there, the product, saving on premium. Some of that our industry does to itself, right? We talk about this all the time, save 15% in 15 minutes and all of the advertising that's out there from the big companies. I think that plays into it.
I mean, yeah, I hear you. What's crazy there to me is I still haven't completely understood. All of that messaging is coming from carriers.
Correct.
You know?
Yeah, Geico, State Farm,
Yeah.
or Allstate, whoever.
Which is fair. To a certain extent, it's fair.
Yeah.
But the advisors sitting in between the client and the insurance carrier, like, where are their voices? And, I just can't help but to think, like we were talking before, about how the conversation would be dramatically different with a business owner if other professionals walked into the room. Other than a insurance salesperson or producer or risk advisor or however you want to talk to them.
Yeah. So you're talking like other professionals being attorneys, accountants,
Exactly.
whoever. Yep. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think it is different. And maybe where you're going with that is that because those industries a lot of times don't have the product that they're selling behind the scenes, they're selling their advice in a lot of regards, right? When you think attorneys or accountants or sometimes a banker, I guess you could say has a product, in a loan or whatever. But a lot of times they're still looked at more as an advisor than, the independent insurance agent is. So that could be a difference that drives some of that. But if we go back to kind of that original question we were asking ourselves, and we can get into maybe how we got here as an industry, but what's more impactful to the business owner, right? To our client. So at the end of the day, why are they going to do business with us? Right? Is it so that we can save that premium, or is it so that we can help them achieve their goals? And I think even achieving their goals sometimes is a buzz term that people use in the industry, like, oh, we're here to help you achieve your goals.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean? I would think, especially if you're listening to this podcast, or you've heard us on with Dan Allison in particular, some of our other guests, you're probably here because you want to be that advisor. You're already working in advisory capacity, right? So you understand where we're going with that question is ultimately the more value to the business owner is helping them achieve those goals.
That's an interesting point, though. This week, I had a little windshield time, and I was chatting about this with a different advisor, and we were talking about. Yep,
he's been on the podcast.
He has. So we were chatting about this and how it is a buzzword to talk about, helping somebody accomplish their goals.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of people in the wealth management space and other areas talk about goal planning. And we're really trying to change our mindset internally to how can we be an outcomes-based model, right? Where it's not, yes, we're going to help them identify and help them be on the road to accomplish their goals. But then how can we, harness that and help them provide better outcomes and then track those outcomes, right? Are we getting good outcomes or are we not?
Yeah.
Instead of just being focused at the very beginning on what are your goals.
So dive into that a little deeper, though. When you say, again, thinking about independent insurance agent industry, what defines those outcomes? What does that mean? What is driving a good outcome?
That's a big question. I mean, there's a lot that's driving up.
Hey, I'm here to stump you, man.
Right, yeah. There's a lot driving those outcomes. But I can't help but to think that risk management is the foundation of any good outcome.
Yeah, true.
That's what's frustrating to me about this whole thing. It is, we need strong advisors changing the way business owners think and changing the way other peers think in the industry about risk management, because it is literally the foundation on any good goal plan, on any good outcomes-based plan, you name it. Like, if the wrong thing happens, all the fun stuff doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's all wiped away in an instant.
Yeah. So I guess that's where my mind goes first, sitting here chatting with you about it, is a good risk management strategy.
Yeah. And the funny thing about that is, we've talked about this before too, building a better risk management strategy often impacts insurance pricing.
Yeah.
So it's ultimately like the better outcome in our question is to achieve company goals. But a lot of times doing that does lower the insurance premium over the long term, right? And a lot of people, especially, on the carrier side, want you to focus on that 12-month renewal, not necessarily on that 3, 4, 5-year outlook. But the things that we do today impact those pricing models in the future. If we can lower risk, that's ultimately what an underwriter is looking at to say, how much do I need to charge this company to make an underwriting profit, right? So I think that's oftentimes they're one and the same conversation. It's just we don't approach it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you think about within just the insurance space, so even if we're just talking about insurance products and premium, you can and should still go in as an advisor on what can the company do, what can they do proactively to impact insurance pricing versus just relying on shopping insurance carriers or whatever it is. And there's a lot of things you can do. It ultimately goes back to your point of a better risk management strategy.
Yep.
So it is the foundation, and oftentimes it helps companies achieve their goals, or at least protects them while they're working to achieve those goals, right?
I agree. Why does it have to be like this?
That's a good question. I think there's several reasons. We hit a little bit on this with Dan Allison. I think compensation models are set up in such a way that incentivize the focus to be on the product versus on the outcome, as you put it. In some cases, we can't do anything about that, though. Like in Nebraska here, some carriers, you can't even pull out commission to charge a fee or whatever it is. Although that's becoming more prevalent, being a consultant. So I think that's a big piece of it. But I also just think we do it to ourselves in a lot of regards. As the industry, I don't think we do a good enough job of approaching it with the client as being an advisor versus just a vendor. There's a big difference. And I think we can change that, though. I think we sit in a position to be one of the most important advisors on that client's team for exactly what you said.
Yeah.
If we don't have the risk management nailed down, everything else that client does could be wiped out in an instant.
Yeah, it's crazy to think, on the macro level of all of the pulling forces that exist in a client's mind. Because, historically, clients drive the majority of a change inside an industry.
Yeah.
So, how do we get ultimately our clients begging for a different way to interact than what we do right now? Because we see it. I mean, I'm at a couple arm's length away from the day-to-day insurance stuff that we're doing here, but twice this week there were 2 interactions that solely went down because of price, which I understand if that's done in a broader strategy and is part of the process. But when it's clearly outside of that and it's just purely short-term thinking, and they're well-run businesses and good people, how do we get them to start to beg for a different way to interact with a risk advisor?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because it's an industry-wide question. I think, it goes back to what you had said about, I think, that outcomes-based model. I think if clients start to see better outcomes with a different model, with an advisor, and I bet most of the people listening would know those clients that they have that view them as truly a trusted advisor, and how much better of a relationship that is. And that even if it comes down to price and maybe we're a little bit more expensive, they're probably not going anywhere because they know the value they're getting, right? And I think it probably just takes that diligent effort to get there, and changing the way that those clients think, Steve Jobs quote. Because ultimately that's what's going to force change in the industry. Once clients can see that there is a better way to manage this, they've been trained one way, or they've been trained a certain way for a reason, in a lot of regards, and we need to change that thinking. But it's also really easy to make a lot of money not doing it that way, and selling a product and going to the golf course.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I was listening to a podcast not too long ago about a wealth management advisor down in Florida, and he charges his fees based upon a percentage of the assets that they're managing for the client. And he was getting challenged on that model, on the whole outcomes-based goal planning, being strategic, model. And he's like, you know what? I still think we can connect the dots, because every time a client comes in here, yes, we're talking to them about, investments and taxes and estate planning and everything else. But what we're really trying to drive home is the plan and the outcomes, regardless of how he charges the fee.
Yeah.
It's here's the amount of money that you're paying the advisor, and here are the outcomes that have resulted from being engaged with us in a business relationship. Is it worth it or not?
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting, because even though the wealth management industry may be a few years ahead or a lot of years ahead from,
Seems like it. Light years.
Just the business model and how we interact with clients, he's still able to change the way his clients think with operating that type of model. And I was asking myself, like, why can't we do that?
Well, I think that's a good point. I mean, even though the compensation models are set up a certain way, it doesn't mean we can't act differently.
Right.
It doesn't mean that we can't, just like he did there, you're paying the advisor a certain amount, you're paying the broker a certain amount. It doesn't matter whether it's 8%, 10%, 12%, whatever it averages out to be.
Mm-hmm.
That comes to a dollar figure every year, right? So you're paying them a certain amount, and what outcomes is that driving in your business? I'm not sure that even many business owners look at it that way. We're seeing it more. We're definitely seeing business owners in the aggregate certainly having a little bit of a shift where they're seeing this in other areas of the business and they're starting to kind of question.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do think that the shift, while it may be slow, is starting. And there, like you said, there's no reason why we can't flip that on its head and say, hey, here's what we anticipate you paying us over the year, and here's the value that we're driving.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that may have to go beyond the insurance product from an advice perspective.
For sure.
Right?
It should go
It
beyond.
absolutely should.
Yeah.
And I think it's, when we were talking to Dan, we went through the whole, this can feel like a mountain to climb, right? If you're maybe either at a company or you've operated in a very transactional model, it's like, geez, how could I make this switch? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it can be big, but it doesn't have to be, right? And so maybe I'll ask the question to you is, what are some of those simple things, first steps, that somebody could go out? I always like to boil it down to take the first step, right? Because you're never going to get anywhere unless you take action. What is that first kind of thing or step that somebody could do to start getting more to the advisory model that we're talking about?
Mm-hmm. A couple things come to mind. And business acumen, first and foremost.
Yeah.
If you're not
We could do a whole episode on just that.
right, if you're not constantly learning, constantly tooling up, you're behind the curve. And then what falls directly behind that, in my opinion, is getting the ability to dive into a business owner's kitchen. So their sales process, how they have conversations, how they overcome objections by trying to, get put in a box by the business owner about being a transactional insurance guy. No, hold on. How do we overcome that to then be able to have a real conversation with the business owner? And what I mean by that is deeply understand what's going on inside the company. Because it's pretty simple on the surface. You can't provide value on something that you don't understand.
Yeah.
So being able to walk in and understand the business on a level like no other advisor that's in their circle. So think about that when you're talking to their CPA. The CPA knows their numbers inside now. But I would argue mainly from, a corporate finance and a tax perspective, they might not know a lot of their KPIs and metrics internally that they're focused on a lot of other areas inside the company. So how can you level up to really understand that stuff? There's a lot of other challenges that go into that, I think about. Yeah. I mean, if you're a transactional based producer and you're looking to change, that could be a mountain to climb. You really got to, like you said, change the way that you think about your business model. Because if you really have to spend the time to go in and do that and to earn that business, it's going to prolong the sales cycle to a very lengthy process.
Yeah.
You might not have the tools and resources internally to be able to provide a solution that you know that you need because your discovery skills were good. But I still, we've done it. We've patched together that stuff to make that transition. And there are becoming more tools out there where, yeah, for sure. Well,
you said discovery.
or we could just shut the podcast down.
Yeah, well, we don't do that
because
yet.
Everybody
our
figured it
listeners
out.
In France would, not like if we shut the podcast down.
Yeah.
I would not either.
Neither would Big Al.
Yeah.
But you said discovery in there,
He'd
which
just be a security guard.
which I think is the first step is where I was kind of thinking of that is, so again, boiling it down, how do you understand the business better, right? How do you get more business acumen? Going backwards. Frankly, become good at asking questions.
Yeah.
Kind of the sales 101, I guess, but I don't think we apply those same skills a lot of times to the insurance business because we sell a product that they have to buy and that isn't all that hard to go and get, right? Like it's pretty simple to follow an Accord app, get the information, go get it quoted, come back, and if I've got the cheaper price, I'm probably going to win in a lot of regards.
Mm-hmm.
But just get good at that discovery process. And some solutions are naturally going to show themselves, right? Because a lot of businesses are getting that old model. They're not getting any value. And if you're the one going in there saying, hey, how are you handling this? What are you doing here? Where's the company going? You're going to learn things and say, have you thought about that? And probably sell more products, frankly. Because if you thought about cyber liability insurance, you just acquired this company that does XYZ. Have you thought about this risk?
Mm-hmm.
No. Geez, what does that mean to me? It goes back to the Dan Allison story about nobody ever asked him about his buy-sell after day one, and he was $9.8 million underinsured. So that's, I think, if we're just thinking first steps where I always go back to, and we talk about it all the time, it's such an important piece of the process.
Yeah.
Is getting good at that discovery phase, right?
Yeah, being able to navigate those conversations and ask good questions, it's definitely an art. There's no doubt about it. We're not perfect at it by any means.
No. But it's a lot more fun conversations too, because to your point, you're learning more about your client, right? At the end of the day, that's more fun than just going in and selling them a product every year and trying to make sure it's the cheapest it can be.
Yeah.
And if you do it right, you're going to consistently have the cheapest product and you're going to consistently provide the most value and you're going to keep your clients longer.
No doubt. I think about just how we kicked this thing off and kind of the question that we were trying to wrestle around. And again, why we have so much pent up frustration and anger about the industry, because you have, the business owner would have way more fun having an outcomes-based or goals-based conversation with their risk advisor. And the risk advisor would have way more fun having a goals and outcomes-based conversation. Obviously, what comes along with that is competitive pricing, the value, and all the other factors. But it would be much more enjoyable for everyone instead of just walking into the business owner and, doing your annual update, figuring out how many more vehicles they bought during the year, and then talking to them about how their rates are going to go up and what can we do to bring them back down.
Yeah.
Like,
Absolutely.
so that's where, we spend the majority of our time drinking whiskey is how do we...
Not the majority of our time when we're drinking whiskey.
Right.
Let's be clear about that. We do work.
The business owner wants to do it. The risk advisor wants to do it, but we can't crack the code.
Yeah. Well, you as you were talking there, I was thinking, it's basically it takes, you mentioned it, the clients typically drive that change, right? Well, sometimes we have to show the clients a better way, right? Well, we're building a community of people internationally listening to this podcast, right? That all, I would assume, I don't know all of you, but I would assume have a similar thought process, right? Maybe don't know how to get there, but see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? That's why you're listening to this. It's why you're putting the extra time into podcasts and resources and whatever it is. And we can be that change. We can be that community that gets together and says, we're going to go out and we're going to preach this from the mountaintop to all of our clients and prospective clients and everybody and say, hey, there's a better way.
Right.
And if you're getting the old model, you need to consider something else.
Yeah.
You need to think differently, Mr. Client. And if we all do that, we're going to see that change happen over the course of time. So we'd love to engage with people, see what you're doing to do that, see how you're delivering that message, see how we can all come together and say, let's start to change this in the industry and let's start to teach our clients a better way.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think we
That'd
talked
be
about
awesome.
this.
Big Al, you'll put our contact info in the.
I was just going
I mean, honestly,
note that.
We do really want that engagement, whether it's via comments, which do help, but even emails where we can talk about that stuff. I think it would be awesome.
Yeah. Well, and then throw it out on LinkedIn and share
Yeah.
it. And,
Even better.
we'll hop on the train as well and see if we can drive some engagement. But what we're not saying as well is that like all insurance transactions are bad.
Well, they're necessary.
Have to have them.
Yeah.
So we're not saying like there's not room for product people, because to a certain extent, like there will always be product people.
Oh, for
We have to have them. But that's not all we want.
Yeah. Yeah, there's got to be the front end to make sure the product fits what we need it to do, and then also make sure that the product is set up the best way. Because again, insurance products are based on the underlying risk.
Yeah.
And that's how we're going to drive the best outcomes for our clients,
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, it's the better long-term model too, because the industry is changing big time. Amazon's getting into insurance. There's Zebra. There's all the insurtech out there that ultimately I view as the right advisors. It's going to help us, right? We're going to come up with the things that fit our model that can deliver a better client experience. But there are going to be companies that are direct competitors to independent agents. And one of the best ways we can differentiate that is transitioning more to an advisor, which is much more difficult to automate, to put into a technology, to so on and so forth, right? I think actually I'd be curious, Big Al, if you can get your tech skills and see if we could find a recent article on the amount of investment going into the insurtech space, because I've tried to keep up on it. There's a lot of investment coming in,
Did you just pull a Jamie?
Well, I almost called him Jamie, but I didn't.
Amount of investment going into
Insurtech. Jamie would have had it already.
Dude,
we're working on it.
he's transitioning from a security guard to
yeah. Come on.
come on. Yeah.
I mean, again, I think if you have the right mentality, it's only going to provide opportunity.
Yeah,
See what you
100%.
got here.
There you go. What do we got?
Aren't there rules against this that Jamie we're looking up an article online for people who are listening in their car right now.
Yes.
Hit a new quarterly high of $2.5 billion. Rebounded from its. Yeah, keep going. So 8 companies accounted for more than $1.13 billion in funding. So again, this is from, where's this from? Insurance Business Magazine. So there is a lot of funding going into the insurtech space right now.
Mm-hmm.
That again, I think when you saw this a few years ago, it was very much the end of the independent insurance agent. We've talked about this in the podcast.
Yeah.
But we're seeing a lot more now, tools to help the independent agent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's only going to become more impactful when we are advisors, right?
Yep.
And ultimately provide us more tools to help save on insurance premium for our clients, right?
That's just
drive outcomes.
It's a really big circle.
Yeah, flywheel.
So if you're a business owner, which you are, but maybe not use your own as an example, and I walk into your office and I say, we cut to the chase and you think I'm a good guy. So regardless of what I'm ultimately trying to sell, you're like, yeah, I'll listen to you. And we get to the point where I'm like, all right, Elliot, what's your largest, or let me frame this different. What are you trying to achieve inside the company? Just give me if you were running a company and you're out there trying to do your thing, what are you ultimately working for?
Well, we want to grow
Yep.
the company over the next few years.
Okay.
And we want to provide a great work environment for our employees. And we want to make an impact to our communities.
Okay. And then what?
Well, eventually we will, probably transition the company or something and retire.
Okay.
Assuming all goes well. I could get hit by the beer truck.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so when you think about all of that, let's take the beer truck out of it because that's easy. That's a significant risk. Don't walk out in front of a beer truck.
It comes by my house a lot, so I got to be careful.
Don't go outside and you'll avoid that risk. Or anyway, so when you think about that and what you just mentioned, what are some of the top risks that you think about?
I think about
Getting to the ultimate goal.
Yeah, the growth perspective, something that could inhibit that growth, slow down the company, impact what we're trying to do from a growth perspective. So operationally, basically, impact our operations. And then we want to attract good people. We want to keep good people. And then ultimately want to create a business that's valuable that we can either transition to people internally so that I can retire right off into the sunset or sell or do whatever.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of insurance policy exists to keep good people?
I don't know. You got one? I'll buy it.
Right.
How much?
Right. If we could buy an insurance policy right now that would get a person, I think the whole country would
I think everybody on the podcast.
Take 2 or 3 of those.
Hold on, let me.
Yeah, Big Al's going to figure out.
So, it changes the dynamic, right? The point is what when we can talk and have conversations on these levels around what are you really trying to accomplish as a business owner in life, right? How do we transition the company successfully is another big one.
Yeah.
It's fraught with risk. Absolutely. There's going to be products involved. But if that business owner wants to live a long, healthy life, there's not an insurance policy that's going to fix that.
Totally.
There's a ton of risks that exist. Who's talking to people about the full spectrum? And how does that change the whole scope of what we're doing as risk advisors versus how we're operating today?
Oh, absolutely. When you think about just that 2-second, role play conversation, could go down so many avenues of, when I say what could impact the business, we're going to grow and I'm worried about stuff that can keep me from growing. Mm-hmm. Well, what the heck could that be? Because there's a shit pot of insurance that somebody could buy to manage that if that's the right approach. Yeah. Right? They may want to insure that so that they don't have that slowdown.
Totally.
And I just say that because a lot of times we hear that, this advisory model is more work. I got to spend more time with clients. Like, not that that's a bad thing, but I can sell a lot of insurance when I'm supposed to be spending time with clients. There's that dynamic, right? Well, at the end of the day, you can create better, deeper, more profitable relationships in longer term with clients by digging in deeper, like you said, and probably sell more products than you ever thought possible. You know, think of the flip side of that is, hey, here's our cyber liability quote we did for you this year. Take a look and let me know if you want to buy that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I think it's really getting the root of what's important to that business owner.
Yeah, it's no doubt. We've something we should cover is the transition between a transactional business model to a relationship advisory based model. And then how we define that stuff, you know, because you know, when you start to dive into it, I've done it twice in my career. And so, you know, there's some real life stories around some of this stuff. You ask a transactional based advisor to define their relationship with their client,
Mm-hmm.
and then you ask an advisory based advisor how they define relationship with their client, it's completely different.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of energy, and at some point you got to crunch the math on whether or not it's worth it. But there's big companies that have gone through these transitions already, you know, that have crunched the numbers and have seen the light. Again, who's leading that charge in our industry? It's sure as hell not the carriers, but we can't expect them to because they're product people.
Their incentives aren't the same, right? They are by nature providing the product. I think it's people like us having these discussions, listening to the podcast, getting the resources. And like I said, we'd love to engage on it because that essentially was one of the biggest reasons why we started the podcast was, you know, starting conversations around these topics is the way we're going to drive change.
Mm-hmm.
And until kind of the industry, we get to that tipping point, we go the other way where now the majority of people are pushing for, and our clients are pushing for this advisory model. It's still going to exist from a product perspective. Then it becomes interesting that you get the majority of clients asking for it, you get the majority of advisors asking for it, all of a sudden the carriers start to take notice and maybe the products change. Maybe they start to say, well, hey, there's a better way we could interact with the clients.
Yeah.
Maybe they allow us to do more fee-based work.
Yep.
You know, I mean, the whole thing is a big transition, but it takes all of us coming together to say we want to do that.
Yeah.
Right?
You can put more money into products and product development, resources around products. I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. So, you know, like, Dan Allison last episode, great example.
Mm-hmm.
He works with insurance companies that have put a ton of money. It's from a divisional perspective, they lose their shirts. But life carriers that have units that analyze valuations for companies and everything else, it's driven around the ability to go back and sell insurance.
Mm-hmm.
But those types of units in those insurance companies wouldn't exist if it wasn't for more advisory-based people out talking to the community. So if we continue to do that, think about how the resources, as you mentioned, inside these carriers would change, where they would be pointed if there was a demand for things like, oh, business owner, like, great, we've got your buy-sell stuff taken care of. If you die, everyone else in your family is going to be fine. If you live a long, happy, healthy life, like, we don't have that plan nailed down. But,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and so all of a sudden insurance companies might start saying, okay, well, there's risk inside all of that, all of those transactions. None of it revolve around a product. How can we help provide resources that could then, help our advisors think differently, that turns around 9 times out of 10 into bigger product sales because you're having the right conversations.
Yep.
So
It's flywheel.
yeah, from an advisory perspective at our level, it 100% is.
Yeah. Yeah, the more of us we can get kind of clamoring for and asking that and bringing those types of ideas to our clients who are then asking for it and telling other people about it, that's what's going to start this whole change in the industry.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking for.
But hey, let's get past the premium.
That's what we're trying to do.
And talk about some value and outcomes-based advisory work. How about that?
I like it. Big Al's giving us the signal, and I'm out of bourbon, so
All right.
we'll wrap up there.
Well, until next
Good work,
time.
man. See you, everybody.